Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and here we have an iPhone 7 Plus and an iPhone 8 Plus. We're going to run some Geekbench benchmarks on both of these devices. I'll also run Antutu on the phones, and then we're going to compare them with Geekbench to different MacBooks. Now I have a 2016 13-inch MacBook and a 2017 15-inch MacBook. They're both MacBook Pros. They're the top-of-the-line processor specs, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But as you can see here, we've got a 7 Plus and an 8 Plus. So I've closed all apps on both of them. Let's just check. There we go. We've closed all apps on both. We'll open Geekbench. There's Geekbench on both. We're running the same operating system on both, iOS 11, and you can see we have two different processors. This one recognizes it as an ARM at 2.05 gigahertz with 3 gigs of RAM. Here we have 3 gigs of RAM and an A10 Fusion. And let's measure the CPU. So we'll hit Run Benchmark. I'll speed this up though, so you don't have to wait around. The 7 Plus finished first with a single core score of 3497 versus 4240, and in the multi-core score we have almost double on the 8 Plus, 5987 versus 10443. And you can see down here it says iPhone X2, iPhone 7 Plus, and those are those benchmarks. Let's run Antutu. Antutu is running on both. Both have all the apps closed. Let's hit Start Testing. And again, I'll speed this up so it goes by a little quicker for you. The Antutu benchmarks have completed, so let's take a detailed look here. So as you can see, the 8 Plus has a much higher score, 214,487 versus 168,197. And all of the different marks on the 8 Plus are much greater for the most part than the 7 Plus. So it's pretty significant, I think. We can bring all of these open, see what we've got. And this has the True Tone display turned on, so that's why it looks a little bit different. But with all of these, the CPU, you can see there's different scores here. And as far as the CPU mathematics go, they're very similar. But when it comes to multi-core, that's where the 8 Plus pulls ahead every time. Now, the one thing a lot of people were saying is that the 8 Plus seems to be on par with a 13-inch MacBook Pro. I happen to have a 13-inch MacBook Pro that I'll run Geekbench on. So I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro from 2016, top-of-the-line specs. Also, a 2015 MacBook Pro with the top-of-the-line specs I use as my regular editing machine. So let me show you both of those, and then what we'll do is actually do a Geekbench on them, and I'll show you the results in a separate window so that we can go over those and see how they compare. Here is my 13-inch MacBook Pro, and this is the 3.3 gigahertz model with 16 gigabytes of RAM. It runs the Skylake chip from 2016. So I'll run a benchmark on this, the CPU benchmark, just like we did with Geekbench on the phones, and then I'll run one on the 2015 that I'm actually recording this audio on. As you can see, here's the 15-inch. This is the 2017 MacBook Pro with the Kaby Lake processor in it. It's a 3.1 gigahertz quad core as opposed to the 3.3 gigahertz dual core of the smaller version. Both of them have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the 15-inch also has a Radeon Pro 560 in it with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So let's take a look at how they both did. As you can see, the results are quite different depending on which one we're looking at. But with the 13-inch MacBook Pro, we've got 4,045 for the single core and 8,499 for the multi-core score. On the 15-inch MacBook Pro side, we have 4,889 for the single core and 16,263 for the multi-core. Now, to compare this with the new 8 Plus, we have 4,240 for the single core, so faster than the MacBook Pro, the 13-inch dual core. And on the multi-core side, we have 10,443 versus 8,499. Now, this may seem insignificant, and they are tested differently, but these numbers are pretty interesting, seeing how we have such very impressive scores from the 8 Plus and even the 7 Plus. So what do all of these numbers mean? Well, not a whole lot unless you put things in real-world use, such as video compression, photo editing, things like that. And any of these devices are actually pretty good at them depending on the operating systems they're running. So when you're using a single focused operating system, such as iOS for the most part, you're only having one thing on the screen at once, and you can do whatever you need to do. With a MacBook or MacBook Pro, you're usually using multiple things at once, and that can make a difference. But what this means is that the iPhone processor is getting very close to possibly being in a MacBook, and that's really where this stands out. Apple might have a super long-lasting battery performance processor, meaning you could get all day and then some, maybe 2 or 3 days with an ARM processor-based processor, such as the A11 Bionic chip, put inside something like this MacBook here. We may not be that far off, and that's really what this was to show, is how impressive these chips have become compared to the Intel Skylake and Kaby Lake chips. It's pretty impressive. Now, there are certain tasks, obviously, that a MacBook's going to excel at that an iPhone will not. But either way, it's pretty impressive. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.